Today's lesson is still about encouraging freedom and helping us be more courageous and helping us not fear making mistakes. And it's also going to help us be more creative with our lines. This lesson works for any instrument. It's just single note stuff. So this lesson is inspired by Julian Lage, Mononeon, and Victor Wooten. In Victor Wooten's book, The Music Lesson, one of the first things Michael shows him is how you don't really have to be afraid to play wrong notes because there's always a good note right next door. And at some point, Victor mentions that you kind of have to practice making mistakes. And so this is a lesson in the same vein as that. Whenever I hear Victor Wooten or Mononeon or Julian Lage playing, I can just tell that they're not afraid to make mistakes and they're not afraid to just play random things and kind of put themselves in sticky situations and just see how they can get out of him. They're all very playful and they're all very courageous. So for step one, we're just gonna play random notes and pick some sort of rhythmic framework to work in. I like to play along with drum loops, but for today, I'm just going to use a metronome. We're just going to play random notes, completely random, no key. We're just seeing what our fingers do. I'm going to do 16th notes and then jump it up if I find that it's too easy. I messed up a bunch, but that's okay. It's actually a pretty challenging exercise. I'm not sure what it's like on other instruments, but on guitar, a lot of weird fingering challenges come up. And it really illustrates the point that most of what we do is it's founded on patterns and vocabulary that we have. Even if we don't think we're using it, we really are. And a lot of our ability to play faster really just comes down to our ability to look further into the future. And when we normally improvise, we're using a lot of patterns that are stored in our subconscious. And you might not be able to go as fast as you would if you were playing scales and stuff. You can use this to focus on a certain technical thing that you've been working on. So for instance, let's say I'm doing just outside picking, so I'm just picking down up, usually on a lower string to a higher string in the same pattern. And you can focus on that. You can use that as a criteria when you're playing. So for instance, So I messed up, but then at the end I decided, I can also do hybrid picking, like down, middle, or down the ring. But same sort of thing. I'm taking the random notes and I'm applying a technical constraint to what I'm doing. So check this out. It gets tricky. Like I said, there are a lot of fingering issues that come up, and it really just comes down to the fact that you can't predict what you're about to play, or you're not supposed to. Maybe you should look a couple moves ahead in advance, but still look ahead with random patterns. I don't know if that makes sense. What I'm saying is I could look ahead with like that little grouping, just like when I play the first note I've already decided on the other two notes, and then I can think about what's coming next rather than getting caught up in the moment. So let's say I decide to play this little chunk. I would decide in the beginning, and then it would give me time to think of the next thing while I'm playing that note and this note. I don't know if that makes sense. So like I could play that, and now I'm thinking about the next phrase, which might be like something like that. And then once I've thought of that, my fingers can go on autopilot while my mind thinks of the next little random phrase. So it's still random, but you're looking ahead. I think it might be necessary at the high tempos. So let's say I wanted to use tapping as my technical criteria. I could only do tapping and left hand stuff. Let's say no picking. Let's try that out. Yeah. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Maybe some of you can play it way better than me. That's cool. It's meant to be applicable to wherever you're at in your playing. You can make it as easy or as hard as you want. So let's say you're doing tapping, but you're super new to tapping. We can put much easier restrictions. Like we can say we can only use the high E string, and that's it. And then so from there it gets a lot easier. So here's eighth notes tapping on the high E string only, still just random notes. I'll do eighth notes, and then maybe I'll slow down the quarter notes and half notes just to demonstrate. if you are better and you're trying out some of these slower tempos, don't let yourself get bored just because it's easy. Focus on relaxation and really just calming your mind. If the tempo is easier, it should feel like a meditation. And just focus on timing more. You have more bandwidth in your brain. That's how I like to think about it. I'm going to demonstrate the same thing, and I'm just going to sweep. Basically, the rule is my picking has to be sweeping, but I can do legato stuff with my left hand when I need to. It's pretty tricky. It's good to push the limits. It's challenging. It's really challenging. But this will get you focused better. If you're not focused, try increasing the challenge a little bit to where it really grabs your attention and kind of forces you to focus. That's the sweet spot. You don't want to challenge yourself too much because then you'll get frustrated. But if it's too easy, you'll get bored. Make sure to have fun and try not to practice it for too long. Stop practicing before you get bored. That's how you get addicted to practicing.
But the point is that that thing that seemed kind of useless to you became an into hearing sounds of the guitar you didn't expect. Like all that. I'm just moving my hands. I have no idea what. I know it's around the 12th fret. But I kind of want to know what it is. So if I get it.
So in this part, we're going to improvise, and I'm just going to solo, but the thing is, you just start your line with a random line, and then you just try to resolve it, kind of justify it, but start completely random, and then, finish strong on a note in the key. So the loop I just made, it's in B flat minor. I'm always gonna try and end the phrase how I would normally end a phrase. I think this is a very important lesson, that it's not where you come from, it's where you end and how you end it. One thing you can play around with is how many notes are random before you go back to playing diatonic and typical lines. It's just easier if there's less random notes. Sometimes I played lines that were random and I was trying to play out, but then just accidentally played either lines that were in the normal key or lines that implied typical chord changes. And so sometimes it took me a little bit to find the weird notes, just because I was playing random, and sometimes you're going to play right notes but randomly. And then the other thing was that I was trying to continue ideas as they arose. Like if there was something like you can just move it around and stuff. Often I would come out of a weird line and try and do something like that. One thing I just thought of you can do is start your line normal and then end on a weird note, and then try to start the next line in a way that kind of justifies playing that weird note and kind of fixes the mistake. So let's try it. in this last step of the process, or last way you can do this exercise, what we're going to do is we're going to play random notes again, and it's totally free. Make up the rhythm as you go. This is sort of a writing exercise, so when you find something you like, stop and record it, or just work with it as an idea and go from there. Maybe just build an improvisation off of that and try and figure out what you're doing. I was just improvising freely, and then when I came across something I liked, I tried to stick with it and work with that idea, and then I went back and learned what I played and developed a more solid idea based on that.
You have to have a certain reservoir of compassion that the first thing you play will lead you somewhere.
As always, like and subscribe, leave a comment. It helps out the YouTube algorithm god that I am a servant to.
When I stopped practicing that, like, do you ever practice this way and then you go play a gig and you sound like that? So Gary Byrne, said this great thing of practicing scales in random orders. So F major. That's how you practice any skill. Or you it's just one word.
Boom.